What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here, and today we're giving you guys our 6.2 everything you need to know about the upcoming patch, the details on the upcoming live letter, and our thoughts about what we're going to see and what we hope to see, especially as it relates to the future of Final Fantasy XIV. So we dive into kind of the next chapter, the increased raid, the increased gear score, all the things that are going to get you back in and back involved in the world of Final Fantasy XIV, especially if you're part of the raiding community. But there's a lot of questions, a lot of things that we still don't know a lot about, and that's where these live letters comes in to help kind of give us some reveals about what is happening. So Chris, we've had just an insane day over on Twitch today. Why don't you shout out Cryptonics? Why don't you talk about what's going on, and then we'll talk about the live letter in 6.2.
Yeah, so every other week on stream is lore week this week, and then every other lore week is Final Fantasy lore as I get into that. So the next one will be Binding Coils. This week is Guild Wars for my first time, and Cryptionics came in and dropped incredible support, so thank you so much for supporting all that we do. And then the live letters. So live letters for anybody that has, they played Endwalker or they joined for the Endwalker hype and they wonder what these are. We are now into traditional live letter territory. So we have long since sailed the days that they are live translated. Those will come back as we build into things like FanFest. There is a chance that those will take place there. That would make those live translated again. Historically, FanFest is around like the 0.4 patch. So we are a long way away from the first FanFest of 3 and getting back into expansion hype where everything is live translated. So these will be in Japanese only. We get 2 of these per patch, and this is the first of the 2 that are taking us towards patch 6.2, which if I had to put a date on it, I would say is August 9th, which means on my schedule, emotionally, I am prepared for it to be August 16th because I would love to be surprised, but I need to know that, that's when it could be. That's my guess, Brian.
For the release date of the actual 6.2. Yeah, that put it right around the 9th anniversary for Final Fantasy XIV, which I think that would be a fun target because then you could kind of have the celebration 6.2. You obviously have the summer events. We'll see, the Moonfire Fair. We're going to see the Rising event return. So even if they don't hit the 16th, if they're still on target for August, the 16th to the 23rd, I think is the safest bet when it comes to releasing the update, because usually it's around 6 to 8 weeks from the first live letter ish, and that's going to be something to see if they're still on target and for the release. So we could see here July 1st, 4 a.m. Pacific time for us Texas Central Time folks. That's 6 a.m. Chris and I are thrilled. That means we can get up at a reasonable hour.
I was working before that this morning. All on my own.
I was already awake. Rather than having us 3 in the morning, hey guys, I know you're going to be coming in at this in the morning. Note that this
couch before live letters so that I don't wake my wife up when my alarm goes off at 1 a.m.
I'm always in a weird nervous panic because I'm oh, what if I sleep in? And I end up not sleeping. And so it ends up just being a long day. Also on this event, guys, note that the 1st to the 4th is a double XP extravaganza for New World. I'm going to be doing some live streams maybe that weekend, hanging out, just going to be leveling up. It's going to be a really good fun time. So July 1st, the 4th weekend, obviously is going to be a holiday as well. So it's just going to be a really fun, jam-packed weekend. Also, as a shout out, just as an aside, if you guys haven't played the new TMNT game, absolutely loved it. Did that a little bit on stream. We will be playing some more Ninja Turtles coming up. If you haven't had a chance to play it, guys, cannot recommend the game enough. It's on Game Pass too. So if you already got Game Pass and you haven't played it yet, pause the video, come back, go play, come back, and we'll go from here. But the details here is that it's 6.2 part 1. And miscellaneous updates. So we don't see any special interview guests. We don't see any of that as a part 2. So they're going to have a big meaty 6.2 patch. Now, Chris, what do you think we're going to get? I know a lot of chat, a lot of people talking about Island Sanctuary. I know you and I are personally very excited about Criterion. When it comes to Island Sanctuary, I really hope they knock it out of the park. But the biggest nervousness that I have is that people, based off an image, based off of even Zeppel's video saying, I don't think it's Animal Crossing, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my god, my biggest fear is that it's the coolest piece of content that people hate. And that's just where I'm at. I'm I really hope they knock it out of the park, because I think everybody I talk to just casually is all oh dude, Island Sanctuary, I'm all about that. And I'm we know nothing about it. What do you think?
So, your initial question was kind of what am I expecting here? So for a content patch, the first thing is we're always going to get new MSQ. Remember that 0.1 starts a new saga. So 6.0 wrapped up the Endwalker saga. And so we will be moving into that. So we'll get MSQ. That's kind of the baseline. We'll get a new dungeon tied to that. That's a baseline. But with odd numbered and even numbered patches, the odd numbers are your alliance raids. The even numbers are your regular raids. So we'll be getting a new Savage tier. This will be the second set of fights for Pandemonium. So we had fights kind of 1 through 4. This will be fights 5 through 8. Assuming that we get 3 tiers, every other expansion's only gone to 0.5. 0.4 would be the end of that, and that would get us our 12 fights. And so I expect that to be kind of the headliners. But in 0.2, historically, it is a reasonable time to start a relic, which I would be excited to see. There has been some people saying that's tied to Criterion.
It could be like 6.25. Like if they were going to do it.
This is, yes, when we say 6.2, this will be the whole thing. The live letter will go over the whole thing, but some of it will be the half patch. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So 6.25 would be the relic. We also have Island Sanctuary, which could easily be 6.2 or 6.25. Or 6.28, 7, 6, like 0.0 and 0.5 aren't all we get. Do we also get other weird things? Like 0.1 usually means 2 weeks after the patch. 0.7 and 8 tend to be things like World Visit, where they just kind of float out in their own space. So like there's the different numbers mean different things, but we always get a main patch and a half patch. Island Sanctuary on the spectrum, somebody in chat over on Twitch today was asking, like, is it going to be closer to like the most amazing housing they've ever added into the game? Or is it going to be something that I just check in like once a week or whatever, and it's a disappointing mini quest line? And I was like, well, if that's your spectrum, I would put it closer to the second end at the beginning, and just know that it's going to be continually updated content that they build on slowly over the years to come.
Yeah.
Kind of like Nir Saya is supporting us for 17 months.
Thank you, Nir Saya. I appreciate that. So the thing about like Island Sanctuary is that if it, for me, like my requirements that I've always kind of thought is that based off the image is that if it gets me a place where I can unleash all of my minions and let them kind of run around, and if it gives me the ability to do gardening.
All of them. How many minions do you have?
Well,
do you know?
Maybe not all of them. Hundreds. Hundreds.
There's like 400 in the game.
Yeah. So I'd have to check. I'd have to look at kind of when it comes to my personal Final Fantasy 14 goals, like I get these like ideas, and right now it hasn't been to collect the minions, but who knows? Like that, right now my big goal would be to, like, after I finish the Omni 90 race, like I do want to be working on the Fate Mount farm, as a part of that, and then also like diving into like the dungeon and things like that with everybody on stream. Once I kind of feel like I've gotten that done, I'm gonna have a lot more flexibility, and that's what I really enjoy about it. It usually takes me about 6 months to get the Omni race done. But on that note though, like I think if it gives me the ability to, like I said, garden, one of the hardest things about the housing, and as much as I just really wish they would just blow it up and remake it and make it great, like that's just an unreal expectation. And so when it comes down to it, one of the key aspects that's locked to housing has been the gardening. And if they were able to open up a system in which that you then don't need a house to do gardening, I think that helps take a little bit of the pressure. Will there still be people who want a house and can't get a house? Yeah, of course. But like I think essentially then all of a sudden, if like you're able to garden and take part in that system and that economy, I think that opens it up. Obviously, that's going to change the economy of gardening. It probably, for at least to start, won't be as valuable as it has been because it has been locked behind housing. But in the long run of it, I think that's going to be really important to see.
Are we far enough? So I'm only 1 day behind, but in the Arxidara so far, like I haven't seen the final rank. And so when we get to the final rank, I'm really hopeful. I'm still hopeful. I'm still holding out that long bet hope that they would sell Thavnarian onions and trade for Beast Tribe currency, because they're living in Thavnare.
Man, that would crash the market.
And like I know that people who are used to making money off Thavnarian onions are like, oh, that's so bad for me that I can't sell $19 bottles of water to these hurricane victims. But like that's what it feels like. You have an entire system of upgrading your chocobo that is locked behind not only owning a house. Okay, so for people that think owning a house is all about having the gil, I wish I had the gil. No. I've raised the gil. I've made it through Housing Savage, which is easier now that it's a lottery, but it's still Savage. Okay, now I have access to a house. Now you have to play retention mechanics, because the Thavnarian onion is not a plant, set, forget, come back and gather onions. Getting that onion is a whole mess. The seeds are often more expensive than the onions because things don't make sense in the world. And then you have to maintain this crop. Like the act of bringing Thavnarian onions into the world is this just, the reason it's expensive is because it's something that most people can't do, and the people who can do it don't want to do it. And so they expect that return, and the number of people who want the onions is enormous. So I would love to see gardening brought in so that people could either embark on that journey themselves or have the Beast Tribe sell it.
If they do. So let's talk about the onions, right? Like onions have a cap once you hit rank 20 on your chocobo. And so when it comes down to that,
you get the first 2 for free.
Yeah. If they did add the onions as a Beast Tribe, purchasable item, I mean, that would, depending on obviously the amount of Beast Tribe currency it takes to buy the onion, that would really, I think, upset a lot of the onion farmers. However, if you were able to add that with an increased demand, because that would reduce the overall demand because supply would go up. But let's say they added more ranks to your chocobo, and then all of a sudden I became a willing participant in that system again, then I think that could be something I think would be interesting to see. Because then ultimately it's like, oh, cool, let me go ahead and work on getting to rank 40, or something like that. Now, will they do that? We haven't even heard of hints or any kind of messaging on that. So I don't know if that's what we're going to see, but it would be weird if there was not a Thavnarian onion way of acquiring it from Thavnir. It's like, all right, that's a little strange, but okay.
Jordan in chat saying it's 3 weeks. I think that sounds like the number that scared me off of doing it. And so 3 weeks. So imagine it takes 3 weeks of Arc Sidara dailies, right? And so most people would get like 1 onion. They'd be like, yeah, my free onion. Then they'd be like, oh, not doing that again. I'll just pay somebody. So like, you could set it behind enough Thavnarian, the dailies that like people don't want to farm up their own onions. They'd just rather pay. And then it opens it up to anybody that either A, is willing to manage a garden, or B, do Arc Sidara. Maybe some people do both. And onions is how they make their money.
Yeah.
The other thing it needs to do is, it feels like every patch, as we go into a live letter here, almost every single live letter adds exterior housing items. That is going to be a section of the live letter that they go over. I can almost guarantee it. Look at these new things that are the result of some design competition or are tied to some piece of content or whatever. There's going to be some big, beautiful thing. And it doesn't feel good that, yes, your apartment gives you a small amount of space to do interior items. And it's a bummer it's not bigger. And they've talked about how they unfortunately didn't design the system to make bigger apartments, because it's like, why don't they just make them bigger? Because we just didn't make a make bigger button. Like, it breaks all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
We're sorry. Like, we wish we had, like, Yoshi P agrees with you. Oh my God, that would be way better. But they didn't. So, but like, if we just say, at least there is something interior. Well, there is nothing exterior for apartments. And he said they did not design the ability to create an exterior portion of your apartment. So maybe Island Sanctuary will let us decorate part of our outside. Maybe there's a little limited area where we can decorate the outside of whatever that sanctuary is, and we can kind of use some of those exterior housing items. Even if it's not housing, that is the other big features, that you get all these exterior items and you have just literally no place to use them.
Yeah. The Criterion Dungeons, do you think we're going to see the first of that being kind of detailed as to what we can expect? Because Yoshi P did talk about wanting to bring in the adventure plates into dungeons, which after doing PvP, I was like, I love the adventure plates.
Ultimates, time to savage raids, and like tie them to everything. So there's so many in game. It's like, I won't ever get access to all of them, but I have access to my unique 100. You have access to your unique 100. Some of it, we have some of the same ones. I have one that you're like, oh my gosh, how'd you get that? Oh, I'll never get that, but that's super cool. And like, yes, I would love to see the adventure plate system grow. I think it will. It's still kind of a beta system. So like, I think that's more just a factor of time. But Criterion Dungeons, the reason I don't think they're tied to Relic, because Relic, they have talked about how much they love the feedback that it is this large group of people's type of content, that it's large man parties, as opposed to Criterion Dungeons are meant to be challenging dungeons 1 to 4 players. So it sounds closer to Deep Dungeon, but more like a true dungeon system. It sounds like a Final Fantasy response to things like Guild Wars Fractals and WoW Mythic Plus. That does not mean a carbon copy, just like Crystalline Conflict is not a carbon copy of Splatoon or Overwatch. It just sounds like, what if we took what we like about those systems, we left behind what we don't like about those systems, and we made it fit within Final Fantasy. So I'm hopeful that that's really all we know about it, is that it's meant to be challenging, 1 to 4 person. That's all we know. And then originally when they announced it, I was like, oh, that's going to be the new version of Deep Dungeons. And then they said Deep Dungeon in 6.3. So wait a second. If Criterion 6.2 and Deep Dungeon 6.3, Criterion can't be Deep Dungeon. So like, I really don't know what it is. And they've been really tight-lipped about it. So this live letter will be the first time we hear big, meaningful detail about it beyond just the handful of interview questions that have addressed it.
Yeah, I really have a lot of hope for Criterion. I hope that it's not, as it's scalable in terms of the people you can challenge it with, as they continue to update the old dungeons to allow for more of that single player experience, which we've seen comments. A lot of y'all are expressing concerns about, in embracing more of a single player kind of motif. And honestly, like, the data will be interesting to see in retrospect when it comes down to it, like what kind of impact that has. But I think essentially, obviously, when you look at kind of that offering, is that they have like a smorgasbord of things that you have a lot of flexibility to participate in. They could go one way or the other. It could be where we look back and say, oh yeah, that obviously like really hurt the community in terms of like, player, expectation. But when it comes down to the Criterion themselves specifically, it looks like when we've seen dungeons become just like the hallways, and when we've seen them just become like, like they're not really offering, and as much as we've all wanted challenging, like a system that's going to push back on us outside of Savage, outside, like we have these, I think, great examples. Like I love when I get, especially an old dungeon that I haven't run in a long time, like it just is so exciting to see that come up in as a part of that rotation. Hopefully Criterion offers a lot of replayability for those looking for that challenge. And then like in my mind, oh my gosh, like if they come out, and not saying they're going to do this, I don't want to set the expectation in everybody's mind this is the way it's going to go, but if they come out and say Criterion is a 5-man dungeon, like it's like, hey, we're looking at the data, like in terms of PvP, like that would boggle my mind. If they've already confirmed that it's a 4-man,
as of now they've said 1 to 4,
okay, and
that there will be more maps or dungeons or whatever they're calling them added later this expansion. I think 6.4, 6.5. So like it is, I think there's just going to be a couple at the start. They're going to add more. Okay. That's back from the roadmap. So that my memory is a little fuzzy, but I do believe they confirmed the number of people. But maybe they changed that, right? It was still in development at that time. So maybe based on Crystalline Conflict, maybe they could pivot that. Oh, dude, like, because when it comes down to it, like one of the things I really like about also Crystalline is that it is 5-man. Like 5-man just feels really good, especially in 14. And now I'm like, man, I want like, and we wanted more 5-man content, especially when it comes down to a dungeon. Obviously it's scalable, meaning like you can challenge it solo, etc. But I think that'd be kind of wild to see if there was a whole new take on content. And then the question is, I guess, if that's going to be like level 90 content. Go ahead. What do you got? I have my notes because I took notes because the roadmap seemed like something I'd be referring to for a while. So it says new Criterion Dungeon will be 1 to 4-man variable difficulty. Depending on how many you go in with it, it will scale. Yeah. It is meant to be so that players can challenge themselves. They will be adding Deep Dungeon Series 3 will be in 6.3, and then in 6.4 and 6.5, which they grouped in the roadmap, it said Criterion Dungeon 2 and 3. So it looks like we're just getting one Criterion Dungeon this patch, which they'll go over at the live letter, and then we would be getting, I assume, one was 6.4 and one was 6.5, or maybe we're getting 2 in one patch.
Yeah.
We will also, with Island Sanctuary, all it said for 6.2 was we were getting Island Sanctuary. They've kept this so vague. People are like, oh my God, they said the thing. They didn't say anything. With 6.3, we were getting additional content for Island Sanctuary. Super vague. And then with 6.4 and 6.5, it says we will be getting an additional area for Island Sanctuary, which makes it sound like to me, like when you unlock the Pixie Daily Beast Tribe, like when you unlock a Beast Tribe or Domin Enclave or something like that, it makes it feel more like a little more player agency because it's your area, but it makes it feel like one of those slowly growing pieces of content that's your thing. It doesn't make it sound like player housing, The Sims has been put in game, Animal Crossing's been put in game, all these different, Stardew Valley's been put in game, and they just dropped like, boom, we have a game within our game. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds much, much closer to the Dome and Enclave, Beast Tribe type systems. Once again, like I like to set my expectations very, very low, hoping they get shattered.
I think when it comes down to it, the thing that also then excites me about the potential for Criterion Dungeon, just like we saw with Zadnor, just like we see kind of with Eureka, is that the flexibility of choices that you take. Because if you're going to go in and challenge it as a single tank, do you want to bring in some healing? Do you want to bring in a re-rate? Like I hope that we start to see these other systems kind of brought in, and that excites me. Player agency, player choice. Yeah, there will be metas. Yeah, there'll be like an optimal things, etc. But I think that's going to be really cool, especially in lieu of Deep Dungeon. So honestly, at the end of the day, like I think July 1st is going to be a real big kickoff for what we're going to see. Obviously, the summer is going to, July is not going to be a month of like big content outside of the we're expecting the data center travel sometime in July, but that could get pushed into August. That's going to be 6.18. So I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we'll actually get some date. Well, maybe we'll get a date on that on July 1st. They'll let us know the status of that, which I think will be really exciting to see. And that's going to be huge, I think, overall for the community, because like you've been playing a new character, been playing the lore through the story. And if you guys haven't been following Chris's journey, he's posting that over on Gaming Kinda. And also Gaming Lore Kinda, if you actually want to see that experience as he voices the entirety of the story itself. And so when it comes down to it, what's really going to be interesting to see is that you've been playing on Oceanic, and you're saying it's kind of a ghost town over there right now,
especially at the time I play, right?
Right, because of the different timings. But when it comes down to it, it's that's going to give a lot of players that have been broken up based off of data center visits, and we're getting more servers and new data center for North America. But all of a sudden, boom, hey, oh yeah, you're on the data center, but you can still be more part of the community. Like if a raid's going on over on Primal, I don't have to go and have a Primal character. I could just data center visit and go and join in on that piece of content. I think that's going to be really healthy for the community as a whole, especially as we try to create events. And it's always been a frustration of being on Aether, and it's like, oh, I'm on Primal, or oh, I'm on this. It's like, well, guess what? We're all going to be more connected. I think there still is restrictions on region.
Imagine content like Ponto, where like for the first 3 hours of his stream, he's just standing around on the docks over on Diablos. Like, it's going to be way better. Yeah, way better. So I think for Discord communities, all the different like fashion events and RP events and all these like nightclubs and all of that, I think for raid groups that want to get together, somebody wants to raid with Lama Todd or Rin Karagani or something like that. I think in general, yes, it's going to bring communities together. I don't think it's going to break anything. One of the questions on Twitch chat today was like, will it break the markets? It's going to break the markets the same way World Visit did. The first week or two, people are going to be like, oh my God, I'm making all this money, like leveling out the market. I'm buying high, I'm selling, this is amazing. And then it's going to just like, because you have to remember, you have to go all the way back out to the login screen to change data centers. It's a whole thing. So there's going to come a point where, like, if people aren't willing to server hop within their data center, the prices on on Aether vary wildly on some of these goods. So if they're not willing to server hop for that, they are definitely not going to be willing to log all the way out, go back to the data center screen, go back to there, back to character select, then log in, then jump to all the servers on that one. They'll do it at first, and a handful of arbitrage people will be into it, but it's not going to like break the economy. Yeah, one of the things I do hope we see, like at some point as a part of the bigger reinvestment into 14, is an updated market system. Like when we talk about like, hey, you listed that for vendor price, like, man, it'd be great if there was a buy order, like people could list buy orders, and I think that helps kind of keep bottoms from forming too much in that regards, and just some really cool modern features that I've really started to appreciate. Would just automatically buy it. Just buy it up. Let Rowena just buy up everything that you list at vendor or below.
Oh, people can make a lot of money in those crazy flips, but it's always crazy to see how how the markets kind of rush to the bottoms from times, and that's where kind of buy orders kind of has that upward momentum and that upward force. But we can talk about economies all day within MMOs. So, guys,
but it'll be worth it for events.
Yeah, guys, that's everything we know about patch 6.2 so far, and obviously, hopefully, you guys join us for the live letter on July 1st. Chris will be covering over on Twitch. I'll have the YouTube feed for you guys. We'll obviously take all the data that we learn, all the information, and summarize that for you here, as we like to do. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, as that's a great way of helping support the channel, helping it grow, and we appreciate you guys for tuning in this far. Chris, why don't you take us out?
Guys, come hang out on the 1st. Brian and I'll be reading the live translation from the Reddit Discord and kind of adding context, as we have been covering these for a very long time now. And so for those of you that don't speak Japanese, come hang out on our Twitch page if you want. That's where we'll be. Otherwise, your big punishment is that you'll have to just catch the summary here, and we'll save you time. So think about that.
Whoa.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.